Welcome, everyone. This meeting has been now called to order. The roll call has been taken by the clerk. I just would like to remind everyone of the rules. The meeting is being held in a hybrid format in accordance with electronic participation policy for virtual meetings. The full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic virtual meetings is online to review. Staff and delegates participating virtually are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested by the chair or members of the committee. All cameras for virtual committee members shall remain on to ensure that quorum is achieved. Members of the committee shall indicate that they wish to speak by physically raising their hand. Members who are, no one's in person. All members of the committee will vote by a physical show of hands. Please leave your hand raised until the chair has determined the result of the vote. In the event of a connection or service interruption that occurs that affects quorum, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw will continue to apply. So we have some new members here with us this evening. I'm gonna go quickly around. If you can keep it to under 30 seconds, introduce yourself and kind of what kind of perspective you bring to the Heritage Committee. So I'm Nathan Etherington. I'm the chair of the committee. I am our Brant Museum and Gallery Association representative. And I'll go in order on my screen. Next, I have Dan Brown.
Hi, I'm Dan Brown, and I restore old houses, and I have a lot of experience with building and restoring houses. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I love heritage houses. So
great, thanks, Dan. Next on my screen, I have Linda Holder.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm interested in the maintaining the heritage and the look and feel of that small town atmosphere that comes with all the older homes and that.
Thanks, Linda. Next, we have another new member, Cynthia Chamberlain.
Good evening, everyone. I'm new to Brantford. I've only lived here since April of last year. And I wanted to join the Heritage Committee because this is the first time in my adult life that I've lived in a town that has places that are older than 70 years old and that were not put up for just the summer. So it's very exciting to see these old buildings, and preserving them is actually very, very vital. So this is really cool. I'm glad you accepted me.
Thanks, Cynthia. Next, we have Bev Garner. Who's trying.
Sorry, there you go. Bev Garner. I've been on the Heritage Committee for some time, and I worked as an archaeologist for many years with a consulting firm that was based in Toronto. And I too really appreciate the heritage buildings that are found in Brantford.
Thanks, Bev. Next, we have Sandra Micucci. Hope I'm saying that name right. Sandra, are you able to unmute?
There you go. I'm Sandra Micucci. I'm the representative from the Downtown Brantford Business Improvement Association. So I'm coming with that perspective. We also own a building downtown on King Street that is, it's one of the older buildings. And we also have, my husband and I have an engineering and planning company. So I come from that perspective as well.
Great. Thanks for introducing yourself to us, Sandra. Next, we have Gregory Wilson.
Hi there, I'm Greg Wilson. I've just loved the history of Southern Ontario, like from Loyalist, even before Loyalists, and the fact that Brantford has the history that it does. I'm excited to be here to help preserve that history through this committee.
Thanks, Greg. Next, we have Councillor Samwell, who is joining us from the road.
Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Samwell, and yep, still on the road. So thought I would be back in time, but I thought I would pop on virtually in the meantime. So hopefully I don't drop off or anything. But I'm new to heritage as well, and I just love the idea of preserving our history and the heritage of our city and otherwise. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samwell. Next, we have Rob Adlam.
I am Rob Adlam. I represent the Canadian Industrial Heritage Centre in Brantford here, and as such, I have an interest in Brantford's rich industrial history.
Thanks, Rob. So for our new committee members, I hope that gives you a bit of a taste of all the different levels of expertise that come before us at the Heritage Committee. I also have a note here saying that elections will be held in March. So I believe that's for chair and vice chair. We'll re-elect them at that point. So moving on through our agenda, item number 2 is declarations of conflicts of interest. If you have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda this evening, I would invite you to declare it now. Seeing none, there are no presentations or delegations for tonight's meeting. And we will move on to items for consideration. We have some proposed alterations to 64, 66, and 70 Brant Ave, which are 2 designated properties under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I will ask Dawn to come forward and speak to the item. As a reminder, you have 10 minutes inclusive of questions. I think Dawn was in the waiting room.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Don, and I represent Terra Firma Retaining Walls. And we have been hired by Mr. Chris Seesma to replace the retaining walls at number 64, 68, and number 70 on Brantford Avenue. And Mr. Seesma was given a work order by the city to replace those retaining walls, I believe 2 years ago. And it took us about a year to get all the reports in order. We got a geotechnical analysis done on the slope, and we had engineering drawings drawn up by AD Engineering. And the retaining wall itself is roughly about 65 feet from the buildings in question. And the retaining walls hold up the parking lot at the back of the property. And we have sent some drawings and information to the committee. I don't know if you guys have access to them right now, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, that's it for your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from any members of the committee for our delegates, presenters? Bev, go ahead.
So the final drawings that we received today, that's how the retaining wall will be constructed, with the large pieces at the base and then the wood above those. Are they stone? Are they, what is their composition?
Don, you, I think you tried to unmute yourself and you ended up muting yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Go ahead.
Okay. The retaining wall itself is about 16 feet in height, and it will be made out of 1-ton precast concrete blocks. It won't be wood. The retaining wall will be concrete blocks, and it'll be supported by geogrid that will be laid horizontally between each block, and the wall itself will be about 70 feet in length.
Does that answer your questions, Beth?
Just The picture that was shown to us in the last submission by Lisa had a wood fencing on the top. Is that how it
So
would be?
no, that there won't be wood fencing on top. I apologize for the confusion. That's I just wanted to show the committee the type of blocks that we will be using. But as per the building code, it will be a guardrail that will go on top of the retaining wall, not a wooden fence.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the committee for our presenters? I have maybe one. You said a geotechnical study was done of the area. What did that entail? What kinds of materials did they find? The consistency of the soil?
So geotechnical slope stability assessment was done by SoilMat out of Hamilton. And they took some, they did core sampling and took out samples from the site. And it turned out that the top layer of the site is mostly organic soil. And the remainder of the site is mostly sandy to sandy clay. And their recommendation was to embed an extra course below grade because of the organic material that's on site right now.
Yeah, okay. And how do you know the depth of those layers?
So the base of the retaining wall will be about 3 feet below grade.
And does that impact then that sand layer, or is it just
it will be, so the retaining wall be sitting on top of the sand layer because it's a heavy structure. It cannot be constructed on organic material. So we have to actually reach the sand layer to provide the retaining wall stability.
And then is there, I know you mentioned that it was some distance away from the building, so there's going to be no impact on the building of the retaining wall against any of the foundations for these properties?
No impact on the buildings whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your presentation coming before us virtually, given the weather.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I will now ask Patrick Fusier, long-range planner, to come forward and provide an overview of this item.
Thank you, Chair. And I do have a staff presentation, which I provided to the city clerk, so that should be on the screen shortly for everyone. So this is the staff presentation for heritage permit applications HA0123 and HA0223. We've assigned two numbers just because of the two properties. The retaining wall stretches onto 64 Brant Avenue. Most of the retaining wall work is happening at 66 to 70 Brant Avenue. Next slide, please. So just these are maps and aerial photos included in the appendices to the report. So we just have the aerial photo and the location map showing the location of the two properties and their boundaries. So the properties are near the corner of Brant Avenue and Church Street and just south of Waterloo Street to the north of them. You can see both properties are irregular in shape. 66 to 70 Brant Avenue is accessed from the rear via an alley. I believe a number of years ago, there was a severance application to address some of the land at the back of the property. But there's some slight remnant of that ownership and that property line. You can see that some sort of a tail at the back of 64. And so it's that narrow portion where the retaining wall would cross onto 64 Brant Avenue. Next slide, please. Just for context, this is the front of 64 Brant Avenue. This is what you'd see on Brant Avenue itself. Next slide, please. And again, for context, just this is what 66 to 70 Brant Avenue looks like from Brant Avenue itself. Next slide, please. So again, more of a context shot establishing the grade slopes down from Brant Avenue towards the Grand River and towards Grand River Avenue. So this is actually a shot from Church Street, 43 Church. We just annotated the tan building you can see up on the hill. That's actually the rear of 64 Brant Avenue. So I'll give you some sense of just how much grade drops from Brant Avenue down towards the river. And the alley on the left-hand side of the image, that's actually that sort of irregular tail. That's how you access the rear lower portion of 66 to 70 Brant. Next slide, please. So this is based on one of the drawings that was provided by the applicant. I just overlaid this on an aerial photo, but this shows the location of both properties and the actual, or the general location of where that retaining wall in the rear yard is located. So you can see in this image, there's a bit of an existing retaining wall. You can see some shadows. There's a sort of a white van, a sedan or other vehicle parked at the top of the backyard for 66 to 70 Brant Avenue. A new retaining wall is going in place behind that. So again, all the work in this situation is at the rear of 66 to 70 Brant Avenue with slight encroachment on 64 Brant Avenue. The owner owns both properties and has applied for the permits. So this work is required because the Heritage Act requires heritage permits when you do work on the exterior of a property in a heritage district. In this case, though, except the distance from the buildings, there's actually no involvement with this retaining wall and the buildings themselves. Next slide, please. This is just one of the engineer's drawing. One of the engineer's drawings provided by the applicant just shows the general construction of the wall, its shape. So it's the applicant, their agent, Don, gave a good description of the size of the wall and its construction. But what I want to illustrate with this slide is just, this is being designed by a professional engineer. They have reviewed all manners of the design, the geotechnical study that was referenced. So these drawings would be ready for a building permit. And this is what the building department is looking for, and engineers signing off on the design of this wall to ensure it meets its performance standards, that it will hold that soil volume and building volume. With respect to heritage, being a district, we have a district study that provides design guidelines, both for changes to properties and for new builds or larger alterations to properties in the district. But that said, the general guidelines really focus on the interaction of properties from the streetscape. So how do properties, where they face Brant Avenue, how do they relate to their neighbors? How do they match or are they sympathetic to the era of the district, the various architectural styles and design features, the building height, the massing, material use, color schemes. In this particular case, if we go back one slide, again, the work is happening at the rear of the property. This is far removed from the actual historic buildings on the two subject properties. From a staff perspective, there's no negative impacts to the buildings or any property within the district. And in fact, the construction of a new retaining wall really helps to ensure that both buildings stay in place and aren't subject to settling as gravity tries to pull that volume of soil down the hill towards the Grand River. So going to the final slide, that'd be advancing 2 slides. Really, staff's recommendation in this case is we feel this is a fairly straightforward application. There's really no negative impacts to the historic buildings. And this is really about just making sure that property is safe and can be utilized. Based on what we've seen from the applicant's material, an engineer has reviewed that report and provided the stamped drawing, and there's no changes happening to the historic buildings. So staff recommend that both permits be approved. So that concludes my staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any additional questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Patrick. Any questions for Patrick about his report? Dan Brown, go ahead.
So the retaining wall is not close to the houses, but what about 72 Brant Ave, the next property over? That retaining wall looks like it's right up against that house.
So through the chair, so that is a much more recent addition to the district. I don't have the exact date, but it's a fairly functional pharmacy. I believe there's still some setback in space between 66 to 70 Brant Avenue and the property to the north that will let that wall be built and give that distance. As a structure, I do believe this was reviewed against the zoning bylaw by the building department. this is essentially existing where the retaining wall, or in the same general area as the existing retaining wall at the back of the property, and just assures that flat grade at the back of 66 to 70.
Okay, that answers your question, Dan. Any other questions from members of the committee? I just have one for Patrick. I know this is a bit of a technical nature, but would it be normal procedure for us to ask for or get copies of the geotechnical study? It's part of the earth history of the area, and that may as well highlight additional information for members of the committee.
So through the chair, we did see a draft copy of the geotechnical study. The final would have been reviewed by the engineer in the course of preparing the drawings. At the time, I looked at it, and I just thought, this informed the final alterations happening on the site, the retaining wall and the work going into it, its design and construction. We just didn't include it because it was a larger document, and we felt this was a fairly straightforward application because it didn't involve the actual historic buildings. In future, we can attach any studies we receive like that.
I think that would be helpful just from my knowledge of geotechnical studies and taking geotechnical courses, which is why I asked the applicant about the material that the wall was going to be placed upon, because if it were let's say a less suitable material, that then could also pose danger for the future if it is not put on a proper geotechnical foundation. So that's the only reason why I asked for that.
So through the chair, we can include that in the future. And just for clarity though, if this had been, let's say, work happening to the foundation of the building, right? Let's say like an exposed foundation. If it was directly related to the historical building, then we would have attached that for the committee.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Patrick. I see Linda's hand up as well. Linda, you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering when the work is being done, will Brand Avenue be blocked by any vehicles? And if so, how long will that take effect?
So through the chair, based on the location of the work, I don't expect that there would be any blocking of Brant Avenue. We do have a city permit process through our Public Works Department to occupy roads. But from my understanding with talking to the applicant and having seen that draft study, I did note that because it's a retaining wall to hold back quite a volume of soil, the work would be done very quickly to basically minimize any chance of movement. So it would not be long, but again, being at the rear, I imagine there wouldn't be any blocking of Brant Avenue.
Okay, any final questions for Patrick? Seeing none, thank you very much, Patrick. So we had a proposed motion that this be approved. Would anyone like to make that motion? See Dan Brown, a seconder. Sandra, thank you. Any other questions or discussions on the application before I call the vote? Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Thank you. I think I saw Councillor Samwell's hand there in the dark. So I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item 4.2. Patrick, do you want to give us a little update on this? I saw your letter in the agenda as well.
Yes, and through Chair, I might actually toss the baton to you as well. So for new members, this is something we wanted to make sure we had a chance to discuss. It's something that hasn't been held since 2019. This is a gathering of multiple municipal heritage committees. Not all members have to attend. It's purely for those who are interested. But a number of years ago, and maybe this is where, and Nathan will have the exact number of years ago and who started it. One municipality and their heritage committee reached out and thought it'd be good to have a gathering of other local heritage committees just to share stories of projects and work that had been going on in their respective municipalities. And, in some cases that can lead to new lessons or new approaches that maybe weren't considered, but just a chance to share knowledge amongst different municipal heritage committees, because everyone will have a slightly different perspective, experience, and approach. So in 2019, the city was actually the last to host this joint heritage committee gathering, and it was held in person. And then one couldn't be held in 2020 again, and since just because of the pandemic. But we had, when Brantford hosted, we invited Haldimand, Norfolk, Brant County. I want to say Haldimand and Norfolk. Nathan can correct me if I'm misremembering that. We also had the city of Hamilton's members from their committee attending as well. When we hosted it, we talked about our Heritage Register project, and we had an archaeologist from a local firm give a speech about archaeology and heritage. This year it's being hosted by Haldimand. I've included the information earlier email about the hosts, or not the hosts, sorry, the speakers. It's a free event, dinner is provided, and then there's 2 presentations followed by a roundtable discussion. I think right now we have 2 members who expressed interest. That was Nathan and Rob. But any other members who would like to attend, I would encourage them to email me just so I can keep a list. I can provide it to staff in Haldimand, and that way they know how much to order and how many places to set. Nathan, if you have anything else you'd like to add, and again, I wanted to make sure the new members were aware of this and our new council representatives, because I do think this is a very interesting event. Lets you, again, hear of projects outside of Brantford, different approaches, or just different aspects of heritage conservation.
Yeah, so it started in 2018. I wanted to do it first, however, Norfolk beat us to it. And so they initiated this in 2018, which is why the city hosted it in 2019 after that. We put it into our Heritage Committee priorities to be a host. And then at that meeting, I threw it out to whoever wanted to host the next one. And as Patrick mentioned, we had people from a number of municipalities, and he forgot one. We also had one person from Cambridge. So that was another one. I looked at other heritage committees in the neighboring area, because I think initially it was just the county, the city, Norfolk, and Haldimand at that point. So we had a smaller group. We expanded it slightly, and then the pandemic impacted everything. So it's nice to see that another municipality has stepped up and agreed to be the host for this year. I did want to highlight for people. I know I want to go, and if someone else wants to go, I would like to set up some carpooling so that it's easier for us all to get there, maybe. So once the final numbers are in, perhaps we will circulate an email between those members and see if we can set something up like that. Any members of the committee have any questions about this, especially our new members? Dan Brown, go ahead.
I've already put my name in with the Brant County Heritage Committee, so I will be going. And if anybody wants to carpool, you can have my name in there as well. I will be attending.
Okay, thanks. I know Lise also had mentioned to me that she was interested in attending, but she's not here tonight. So if you do have an interest in attending, please let Patrick know very shortly, because the RSVP date is there March 16th. So please let him know as quickly as possible. Okay, we are moving through quite fast this evening. So it's not that complicated of an agenda, which is great. We are now moving on to consent items, and attached with our agenda.
Through the chair. Yeah. Sorry, there's a motion attached to that item. If we can just place it on the floor and vote on it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. I see it there. that report 2023-214 titled Information Regarding the 2023 Joint Heritage Committee Gathering hosted by Haldeman County be received. That is the motion. Would anyone like to move that motion? I see Linda and I see Bev seconding. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. I declare that approved. And thanks, Lisa, for keeping me on track. So now we will move on to the minutes. So the minutes were included with your information package. Someone needs to be present in order, present at the meeting in order to move the minutes. But any errors or omissions that anyone noticed in the minutes? See none, then I would entertain a motion to approve these minutes. Moved by Councillor Samwell, and I saw Dan Brown's end there as well. Any discussion? Perfect, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, I declare that carried as well. Moving back to my roadmap. There are no resolutions and no notices of motion. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Sandra, thank you everyone. That was a very quick and efficient first meeting for our new members. Hopefully the next meeting isn't so complicated, or is just as easy as this one is. Have a safe